This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a six-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jack Hirsch, former six-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Frank, but I'm a little somber, and I'm going to tell you why. We routinely say there's so much we don't know about the sport. We say it, but we don't completely believe it because you and I like to think we know an awful lot. We like to think that, but we don't want to boast about it. But I realized this past weekend, Frank, there's so much I really don't know. There's so little I know. And the most basic thing that I thought I knew, I don't know. Timmy Bradley educated me, Frank, on something. Why don't you take it away?
Well, he introduced a new punch called the stab jab. Now, Bradley has been doing commentary for ESPN for how long? 3-4 years? Okay.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
So until January 14th, no fighter ever threw a stab jab. And it's just, Jack, it's just another layer of proof that Bradley wants attention. He's a little insecure, and he wants to be seen as a scholar. Right here I have 6 terms that I've heard him say during the course of his career. The sidestep shuffle, the hop pivot, the check hook, the swivel jab, the step around, and the stab jab. What is next? There are 4 punches in boxing. I don't care who sees this. I don't care if you're the best pound for pound fighter in the world. If you're Terrence Crawford or Tyson Fury, there are 4 punches: a jab, a cross, a hook, and an uppercut. There are variations on when and how you may throw them, but there's no such thing as a check hook. It's a counter hook. The stab jab, the way Bradley showed, it was a punch to the body. The hop pivot, maybe Tyson did that, the way he would jump and change positions. I don't know. A swivel jab, no. And you know what the sad part is, Jack? Timothy Bradley is at the point now that he is starting to bring Andre Ward down. And Ward, I think, sometimes wants to go at it with him, but he backs off. And here's my summary on what's going on. I think somewhere along the line, there's an understanding among the suits that the broadcast team isn't talking to real boxing people anymore. That whatever real boxing audience still exists doesn't pay attention to them anyway. So they just focus on the gimme nonsense. That's my thought.
I think it's a new generation, Frank. What's next? Are we going to talk about the circular hook? You know, a new term is going to come in. And you get a lot of young people. They haven't been around the sport. They're not even familiar with traditions. So Timmy Bradley comes up with these new terms. It sounds good. The stab jab. It sounds good, but it's not.
But to me, Jack, it doesn't sound good. I think he looks like a fool.
Oh, but to young people who
right.
are new to the sport, who are just following it, who don't know any better, you could throw anything at them just about, because it's all about the glitz, okay? It's all about entertaining in some way. So he uses these terms, and while it might make sense to a few young people who are first following the sport, it turns off the people who've watched it a long time. Look, in the 1984
and they don't care
Olympics, I thought it was nonsense. Howard Cosell used the term the speed jab. Of course, a jab's supposed to be quick. I mean, the punch that's most likely to get to an opponent first is going to be the jab because it's thrown with the forward hand. Okay? What are we going to call? Are we going to say that the fighter could jab with both his left and his right next? Are we going to call it the backhanded jab? The forward jab and the backhanded jab. Are we going to make up nonsensical terms like that? But
Jack, the speed jab, I don't like that either. The only thing I can say where I'll at least accept that as being half legit is fighters change speed on their punches. And they may throw bait punches out there, a slow jab, get the guy to feel he has the cadence down, and then you change it. But at the end of the day, it's still a jab. Okay, it can be up or down. Okay, but as far as the stab jab and the swivel jab, and you know what else hurts, Jack? I think because these NFL shows, when they break down the games and they get the chalkboard out, they sound really good, but they're trying to fit 11 pieces in and showing everybody where they're going. In boxing, I see a lot of these videos, and I will see guys break down a move that I know the fighter did it instinctively, didn't even think about it, probably didn't even work on it in the gym, but there are just some things that after you've been in the ring for a while, you get an aptitude of when to throw a punch and when and how to throw it, at what time, and how, the whole process of doing it. Like if I'm tracking you down and you're moving to my right real fast, well, you know what? If I switch and I go right lead, I have a better chance to hit you. To me, that is a fighter's aptitude, because if I stay left-handed or in a conventional stance and you're going this way, I can't cut you off. But if I switch and I get this hand out there, I can block you.
Now, as far as Timmy Bradley goes in ESPN, he's the lead announcer, lead commentator. Andre Ward is kind of this, even though he's supposedly given equal billing, he's not. He's basically the backup. Bradley goes first, then Ward comments. So Bradley's more the lead guy. That's kind of obvious that way. Timmy Bradley, I'll tell you, this is some week. I mean, he's come up with a couple of controversial statements. He really lit into Gervonta Davis.
I saw that.
Something, and his terms may have been a little harsh, but Davis's behavior, let's put it this way, leaves a lot to be desired. We're basically going to leave it at that, as far as Davis goes. We're going to let the courts and the justice system decide what the situation with him is. There's no need for us to comment on that beyond what we're saying right now. But I will say this. If Davis was promoted by Top Rank, he fought for ESPN, Bradley wouldn't have come out and ripped into Davis the way he did. Okay, because had he done it, he would have been called into the office and given a warning. And had he done it a second time, he may have even lost his job. That's the way it works in the business. But they love it when you go after another network and another promoter's
Teddy Atlas would have called it, I believe. I'll give Teddy Atlas that. I think even if it was an ESPN top ranked guy, and that's partly why he's not there, but I think he would call, because he's at the point in his life where they can't do anything to him. He doesn't care. I agree with you.
But he would have called it before. But the thing about it is, had he been asked, I think Teddy would have been smart enough not to volunteer the way Bradley did. And, you just kind of wonder on things like that. But never mind. It's about the fights. And look, Timmy Bradley is inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. You don't believe he belonged in, which is fine. I have no complaints with your opinion at all.
Do we have a problem?
But the thing is, I just
Jack, you went out. I didn't hear anything you said for the last 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. You hear me now?
Yes.
You hear me now? Good.
You said something about Atlas if he wasn't there.
Right. I mean, there's no need to volunteer things against your network unless you're asked. Then you have to give an honest opinion. Sometimes you can't comment on it, and it's understood. But if you can't comment on something that's wrong at your network, don't go after, someone else's. Don't be a shill for your network. That's what I'm saying. You can support your network to a point. I remember when HBO had boxing and Jim Lampley had a show and he was doing a top 10 pound for pound. They all seem to be HBO fighters.
Yep.
Come on. I mean, give me a break.
Jack, corporations, the big corps, they control everything. But as far as the commentating goes, I don't enjoy commentating in football anymore. The little bit of baseball I watch, it's like they're trying to reinvent the game. And I just find Tim Bradley, and again, as we established, they don't want an old man like me or you. They don't care. Everybody I know who has an opinion about this sport that I value are fed up with Bradley and his terms. And like I said, they tune him out, but he's very hard to listen to. And whenever he comes up with one of these new cockamamie punches, I get 10 texts from guys saying, Frank, did you hear that? And I'm just like, what did he say now? And to me, he takes away from the broadcast. And here's another thing I don't like. The lab. Going to go in the lab and work on that. That's the gym. It's not a lab. There's no scientific experiments going there. It's a field of practice where you do drills and you try different things. It's not a lab. I hate that. And that's just another one of his cool kid terms. And he just, I hate to put him down because he was a borderline great fighter. I'm not sure he's Hall of Fame worthy, but he was outstanding and had an outstanding career. But he just tries too hard for me. That's why, we're old men, Jack. I love Don Dunphy. He didn't think you had to talk for every minute of the round and assumed that the viewer had a clue what they were watching.
Well, I remember the first Emil Griffith-Nino Benvenuti fight in which Don Dunphy was the broadcaster. And after the fight, he came under criticism for not making it more exciting. And he said, I'm not going to fake a fight call, make it more dramatic and more exciting. And if you're doing radio, you got to do that. You have to embellish it.
Got to paint the picture.
If people are watching it, I mean, they see what's going on for themselves. I don't want to have open season on Timmy Bradley because I've met him before. He's a very friendly guy. He might be a very nice guy. I don't know.
I'm sure he is.
But, he once said something that really irked me. After he left his career trainer, what's the name? Joel Diaz. He left his career trainer to hook up with Teddy Atlas, which is fine. It was Bradley's right to do that. If as a fighter you feel it's time to move on from a trainer, I feel you absolutely should be allowed. You shouldn't be criticized. It's your career. But when he hooked up with Teddy Atlas, he was speaking before his first fight on the Teddy Atlas, and he said, I've learned more in 3 days with Teddy Atlas than I did with all my years in Joel Diaz. Joel Diaz took him, to a 44-1 record or something, over his career. And then he, for him to say that even if he felt that way, because he was mad at Joel Diaz for whatever reason, you don't say stuff like that. You know how demeaning that is to Joel Diaz?
I agree with you. I think Atlas being the alpha between those two, Jack, has an effect on Bradley. I think we even see it in his commentating. I really do think it affects him. And when you say you know him, see, this is why, some guys say to me, Frank, how come you're not in this Hall of Fame? How come you're not voted in as an observer or whatever? And I tell these guys, I said, look, I don't pal around with fighters. I don't interview them. I'm not part of the network. And that gives me the freeway to say things about Bradley that I might not say, Jack, if I knew him. I might not say that because I may be taken in because I really like him. So the fact that I can there's no conflict of interest. I like that. So I can criticize anybody because I know when I fought and I became friends with fighters, I lost my objectivity. Remember, Tex Cobb was a buddy of mine, and I went into the Holmes fight thinking he actually had a chance. I thought Philadelphia's Curtis Parker was going to be the one to dethrone Hagler. Why? Because I watched him work out. I believed in him. And sometimes when you're too close to something, you can't see the reality of it. So I'm never going to be in a Hall of Fame, Jack, but at least I can speak my mind. I think Bradley's a horrible commentator. I think he tries too hard. Does he know a lot about boxing? Does he say things that are really wrong? No, I think he has good insight. I just think he tries too hard to come off as one of the cool kids and at the same time be a scholar. Now think about this. Everybody's talking about the stab jab now. We're going to hear that in all the fights on ESPN. What the hell is next?
I told you the circular hook. That's next. But listen, let's get to the fighters. We had talked about the possibility of Tank Davis fighting Ryan Garcia. We didn't get fully into the fight for the simple reason we both didn't think it was going to happen, but we thought it might happen. You see, Crawford Spence, I knew wasn't going to happen, but I had doubts about Davis and Garcia. But when asked last week, I said 70% it won't, 70%. Well, now let me say 95%. It's not happening, period. Because one key point that we both brought up, we never saw a contract for the guys.
Right.
We keep hearing they're going to fight. What's the purse split? They have to come to some sort of agreement. And now Oscar De La Hoya, he gave a deadline.
Of today.
Yeah. And like he's not in position to give a deadline anyway. But what the heck is going on? They're not going to fight. It's just a bunch of talk.
Jack, that's just the world we live in today, and it's sad. Did you see that even Arum is talking about that with Fury and Usyk, saying if they fight in the UK and they don't fight in Saudi Arabia, that no way Usyk is entitled to 50% of the gate. So I don't know what they're trying to do there, but that could be a holdup with that fight too.
Well, but no, why wouldn't Usyk fight in Saudi Arabia?
Arum said if the offer isn't good enough, he is not going to they're not going to go to Saudi Arabia. It all depends on that. If the offer isn't good, then they're going to have the fight in the UK. So he says, I'm going to go under the premonition that we're going to like the offer and it's going to be in Saudi Arabia. But if it isn't, our backup plan is the UK, and there's no way that Usyk is going to get 50%.
Yeah, and in reality, Usyk, you can argue, should get 50% for the simple reason he is the world heavyweight champion and Fury is the challenger. Fury is a mature adult, even though you could put question marks next to the word mature. When an adult announces numerous times he's retired, he's given up his title, we ought to take them at their word. Are we not, Frank? Are we not?
Okay.
But
you're leaving that. You were the guy that said the belts don't mean anything, and now because Usyk has belts, you're telling me he's the champ.
He is the champ. Usyk is the world heavyweight champion. He beat Anthony Joshua, the two outstanding heavyweights.
Who had 3 belts.
Well, I couldn't care less who has what belts.
Well, tell me then, why is Usyk the champion? Because he beat Joshua. Because so did Andy Ruiz.
And then Joshua beat Ruiz. So they were the 2 top heavyweights, the consensus 2 top heavyweights in the world outside of Fury.
I don't think the heavyweight champ is decided, Jack. If you said to me, who's the heavyweight champ of the world, I would give you 2 names. It's Fury and Usyk. But I can't tell you who the champion is.
Retirement, Frank.
What's that?
Retired, Fury.
Oh, I don't care about that. Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard did that all the time. Mayweather's done that all the time.
Let's not take Fury seriously. Who cares what he says? Blah, blah, blah. But I will say this, okay? As far as the purse split goes, Fury and Usyk, Fury is more of the attraction. Kind of when Tyson fought Michael Spinks. Michael Spinks was more of the legitimate world heavyweight champion than was Mike Tyson when they fought. But Mike Tyson was considered the best heavyweight in the world, and more importantly, a much, much bigger draw.
I disagree with the consensus thinking that Spinks was a champ. I think that lineage maybe, but I believe that everybody looked at Tyson as the champ and not Spinks. But Jack, Usyk is like Crawford. As good as he is, he's not a big draw. But to me, he's not. And that's nothing against him. There are just some fighters that aren't a draw. But if you said to me, who's the heavyweight champ, I'd give you two names. But if you said, who can beat the rest of the field in the heavyweight division, and if they had a one-off, I would say Fury's number one.
A step further, you're representing Usyk, Frank. Let's say for whatever reasons, for some crazy reason, they call you in. You have to represent him. You have to look out for his best interests, okay? And do the logical thing. You have to negotiate a Fury fight. What's your stopping point where you'll go no lower on the purse? What's the lowest?
55-45. I'll take 45.
Usyk would do that. Well,
I think so too.
Let's say it's 60-40. If I'm Usyk, I might consider it if I want to fight bad enough to take 40%, because that would be pretty massive.
Yeah, but I would really try to hold out for 45, 47.
Right.
But Usyk, I think, if forced to make the fight, he will take less money.
What happens if Fury insists on 65-35, his favor? I wouldn't take the fight. And Fury insists, and the fight falls apart because of Fury's insistence. Would you then say Usyk is the world heavyweight champion because they had every opportunity to make the fight? Fury would have gotten a very fair deal and basically pushed away from it.
I hate when you bring me into these hypotheticals. I don't know, Jack. I don't know what I would think. I'll have to see it happen. All I would say is this. I think Fury is the best heavyweight in the world until he gets beat.
Okay, but let's say I think that fight's going to come off, Fury Usyk.
I do too.
Let me tell you, one fight we know is definitely coming off. A guy you've defended, Errol Spence.
Jack, here you go.
I mean, you know what Errol Spence did to your guy, Boots Ennis? He went on Twitter and he posted LOL by his performance. But
I told you they were going to come out of the woodwork after that.
But he's not. But he's moving up to junior middleweight. He's not going to fight Errol Spence.
He's never going to fight at welterweight again.
What? Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to be at 147 again.
He's playing checkers, Errol Spence. He's moving all over the board. He's avoiding him. He sees Terence Crawford coming up checkers. He moves to the other direction. He sees Boots Ennis. He moves to the other direction. He's like kind of slipping and sliding. He's not trying to be aggressive to get him out of there. Thurman is a fight that, I don't want to say is acceptable to the public, but unfortunately, in a way, it is. It is,
Jack. Thurman only lost to Pacquiao. He's an elite guy.
No. He's for once in 3 years, but he has a name. So
right.
So knowledgeable boxing guys like Frank Lotierzo will get it on pay-per-view. Figuring, well, Thurman, even though you hate the fight, Frank, you hate the fight.
I'll definitely get it.
Thurman's talent, and you feel okay. It's maybe not a mismatch. Thurman has an outside chance, but meanwhile, he's not fighting Crawford, but I'll take Boots Ennis still. If Spence is laughing over Boots' performance, fight him. I'll get the fight on pay-per-view, Frank.
Jack, I have said since the emergence of Boots that I would take him over every welterweight in the world except Crawford, but that window is closing. Nothing has changed. I would still take Crawford over Boots. However, I don't know if I will say that in a year and a half. If they fight and sign to fight next, I like Crawford, but there's no other welterweight I would take over Boots, even off of his last fight. I would take him over Thurman. I would take him over Spence. So I think they're the two best, and we may actually see them fight. I think Crawford, to a degree, I don't know what it is. He just can't seem to find his track and his footing into, getting these big fights. It's a shame because he's sitting on the sideline wasting, and I think he is an all-world, borderline great talent.
Yeah, well, he's in his mid-30s now, and
35, yep.
The activity level, it gets to you after a while. I mean, when you're a young fighter, there's no reason to be that inactive, and an older fighter can't. I mean, we maybe are never going to see we've seen the best of Terence Crawford, but we are never going to see the best of Terence Crawford against an outstanding fighter. Okay?
And see, Jack, in a way, you might be wrong for the fact you can say we've seen the best of him, but he may have another level if he is in there with somebody that pushes him. So in a fight against Spence or Ennis, he may end up being better than we thought if he's pushed, but he just hasn't been pushed.
But I'm going to tell you, Frank, you make a great point. We have to give a fighter a chance to see whether he can go to another level, do something differently. I think we both agree the best version of Muhammad Ali was the first coming of Ali, who could dance, jab, move, was lightning quick. Okay? Had Ali, let's say hypothetically, I know you hate hypotheticals, he went to jail over the military, induction, and never returned to the ring. And all we did was see the first coming of him. You know what people would be saying? Well, I don't think
he didn't fight anybody. We don't know if he can take a punch.
We would have said, so-and-so would have gotten him on the ropes and destroyed him, not knowing he was a master at covering up on the ropes, the rope and rope.
Right.
How mentally tough he was.
He would have never got the benefit of the doubt in hypothetical fights.
Exactly. That's why we'll never know this. When we discuss the hypothetical fight, Tommy Hearns against Floyd Mayweather Jr., you assumed, and maybe you would have been 100% correct. Maybe it would have been that Hearns was going to do this or that, but we'll never know because Mayweather never took himself to another level. Maybe didn't have the opponent who could have, any way you want to call it. Even though against Paul Williams, he may have been forced to. Had Mayweather been forced to take it to an opponent, the way Leonard took it to Tommy Hearns, could Mayweather have done something like that? I mean, we're never going to know whether he had that other gear, okay? Because, he was in his comfort zone.
We saw that other gear with Leonard when he fought Hearns, as you said.
Yeah.
He raised the gear. He had that extra gear. We saw that with Ali many of times too. And look, the tough fights are what make you great, which define you. What was the question on Tyson all the time? How's he going to be when he faces resistance? Well, guess what? He faced resistance, and we found out there are some chinks in the armor. I mean, the only fight I can think of that he was really losing, that he came back to win, was against Franz Botha. Ruddock gave him a pretty good go and gave him resistance, but he never trailed in those fights. Botha, he had lost 4 rounds before he caught him with that shot.
Frank, it's all about image. Let me throw this at you. The Buster Douglas fight. Douglas was given a long count, but I give Douglas the benefit of the doubt because you have to listen to the referee counting. What bothered me in the Douglas-Tyson fight, Douglas got his glove off the canvas a fraction of a second before the 10 count. He didn't show the resolve to get up a little quicker than that, which I felt he could have. It's like he was lazy on the canvas. Let's say the referee waved his hands and said he counted Douglas out or whatever. You know what people would have been saying about Tyson? What guts, what heart, his eye is closed. It's a legendary victory. He showed he had the heart of a lion. But because the referee didn't wave his arms, it was over. The round ended. Douglas came back. We don't say that about Tyson.
But, Jack, That's why we love sports, because one play, one move, one punch. I mean, think about it. If Scott Norwood hits a field goal, Bill Parcells isn't the legend that he is today. Okay? He'd be 1-2 in Super Bowls, and his career would look a lot different. But
Yeah.
Norwood missed it. Parcells had a great game plan, and those little adjustments were just enough. Jack, two things before we get to the hypothetical fights. What fight of your lifetime were you sure one guy was going to win and he lost?
Oh boy, Frank, I'll have to think that one over. It's happened before, certain fights where I really looked bad, with
Well,
it.
yeah, but we all miss those. I'm trying to think on my end, what fight was I sure a guy was going to win?
I'm going to look like a fool now, but one comes to mind. I kind of remember when Lloyd Honeyghan was going to fight Marlon Starling. I was high on Lloyd Honeyghan.
Right.
Because Starling can't avoid him. Lloyd Honeyghan will take it to him. And I remember missing that one. I'd really have to give that some serious thought. Because I've missed my share fights over the years, but I'm sure there's been some. You know which fight I barely survived? I thought when Arturo Gatti fought Tracy Harris Patterson the first time, I thought Tracy Harris Patterson had a weak chin. I thought Gatti, big punch, was going to ice him quick. I went all over. This fight's going one round. I call up Johnny Boz, famous matchmaker. He says, you're right, Jack. I agree with you. I know Tracy Patterson. I think Gatti's going to get him out of there. Zip, zip. Gatti wins a disputed decision. And as I'm watching the fight, I figure, darn it. I totally, missed it after going all over, calling it a one-round fight.
I'm trying to think, Jack, and it is a tough question. I can't think of my greatest miss. I mean, what comes to mind is I didn't think anyone could beat Donald Curry at 147 in 1985 or 86. So, I mean, the Honeyghan fight was a pretty big miss on my part. But you know what? Let's touch on that next week. We'll think about that. Our best call and our biggest miss.
Okay, before we get to the mythical fights, I have to call you out on something, Frank.
And that's what I was going to bring up. So go ahead.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, last week, I wasn't in the mood to discuss it because we had another agenda and it all of a sudden came up. And I knew if I started debating you, it might take a while. It shouldn't take that long today. I want to make it clear. I have no objection to anyone who calls Sugar Ray Robinson the greatest fighter pound for pound ever. I don't have an objection. I've done pound for pound lists before. I did one many years ago. I had Robinson #1. But you want to know something? I could change my pound for pound list every month. That's what I could do because some of the guys are real close. For example, how do you rate, a Harry Greb and a Sam Langford? 1A. I could flip flop guys like that if I absolutely had to. But I kind of objected the way you said Robinson and Muhammad Ali. You were making it out like it was going to be no contest. You know who you were sounding like?
You had fun with that, I saw.
You were sounding like Russell Peltz when he was asked years ago who would win between Briscoe and Hopkins. And Peltz, who promoted Briscoe, said it wouldn't even be a fight. Benny would take him out within 6 rounds. Russell, to his credit, he's improved. He now says Briscoe will win a decision, that it might be a close fight, but Benny would prevail.
So you don't think there's a chance that maybe Russell was overstating it just because he was excited and felt the challenge to make his case he went too far, which I did last week, Jack. I'll take back what I said. Okay. I said that Robinson and Ali, if they were the same size, Robinson would kick the crap out of Ali.
Well, I use better language, Frank. Robinson would beat the heck out of him.
Whatever. I will come back off of that a little bit. My point is this. Robinson was clearly the better fighter I can't think of one thing that Ali did better. I can't think of one intangible that he has over Robinson. And in my opinion, Jack, Muhammad Ali may be the physically and mentally toughest boxer in history. However, Robinson is right there. Like, I don't feel comfortable saying that Ali was tougher than Robinson. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, I might make a pick, but I just don't know if you're going to make the case for Ali, where do you make it? I don't see the intangibles and I don't see the mechanics.
He had a better jab than Sugar Ray. He did. Ali did have a better jab, but Robinson.
He had a different jab. It was a different jab. Ali's used his more for defense. I think Robinson's was harder. I think he used it to set up his right hand better. Robinson had a better right hand. But yeah, look, we're splitting hairs. I mean, look, I still have Ali, the greatest heavyweight ever, based on resume and head to head. I have Robinson, the best fighter, call it pound for pound, whatever. I think he is the best fighter in boxing history. And that's basically because, Jack, he could box like Ray Leonard and hit like Tommy Hearns. I can't think of another fighter in history who you can say in his weight class, you could make the case that Robinson is clearly the greatest boxer in the history of the welterweight division. And you could make a case he's the greatest puncher too.
I want to make something clear, though. I don't object to any of that. But what I want to call you out on, make it clear, no one is going to dominate Ali. Robinson isn't going to fight Ali in a 15-round fight and beat him 12 rounds to 3. That's not going to happen, Frank.
Jack, I will accept that. All I'm saying is this. Robinson was a greater fighter than Ali. And they're never going to be the same size, so we're never going to know. But if I have to go to court in front of the boxing judge and I have to make a case for who's greater, Robinson or Ali, I'd rather be the lawyer making the case for Robinson because I have much more to work with.
Well, Ali cheated himself historically.
And we never saw his best. There's a problem there.
By not getting into shape for Jimmy Young, the first Norton fight, he cheated himself historically. Right. And had Ali trained all along the way a fighter should, he would have been much better than he was at an old age. But it's
Jack, if he would have trained for every fight like he did for George Foreman, he would have never lost.
I watched actually a Robinson fight today against Joey Maxim. You know, I'd heard about the fight. I'd seen some clips. I watched it basically in its entirety today. Robinson really looked good against a much.
He beat up Maxim more than Archie Moore did, Jack. Think about that.
How they could allow them to fight 104 degrees. That was insane.
Donovan passed out the referee. Jack, think about this. Robinson came into that fight at 157. He beat up Maxim more than Archie Moore did. Think about that. He beat up Joey Maxim until he ran out of gas. He beat him up more than Moore, and he was a lot further ahead.
He outfought him, outboxed him.
Everything.
But I don't want to say put a beating on him. He just, was basically just clearly beating him round after
He
round.
proved he was superior. He beat for the rounds they fought before Robinson collapsed. Robinson put more of a gap between he and Maxim than Archie Moore did. But look, that's why we have weight classes.
And what mythical fights do we have, Frank?
Well, speaking of Muhammad Ali, he's the first one. He's the carrier from last week. Muhammad Ali against Lennox Lewis.
I'll tell you, I once talked about this. I talked to Emmanuel Stewart when he was training Lennox Lewis. And Emmanuel, believe it or not, hinted that Ali was maybe just a tiny bit overrated, tiny bit, because of his great personality. You hear me, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay, because you froze up on the screen.
I didn't know that because I didn't hear.
But he told me Ali and Lennox Lewis, He could see it as being a nip and tuck type fight. They asked Lennox Lewis. Ali was Lennox Lewis's idol. And Lennox was diplomatic. He said, on my good day, I'll beat him. On his good day, he'll beat me. In other words, Lennox didn't want to talk about it because he loved Ali, okay?
And he has nothing to gain by saying it.
But I just feel, as great as Lennox Lewis's resume was, I think Ali just hit too fast. Hand speed wasn't Lennox Lewis's strong point. I don't think he would have ever met anyone with Ali's speed, movement. Don't tell me Evander Holyfield. Come on, give me a break.
Jack, I didn't say it. I didn't say anything.
No. I don't mean you, Frank. I know there are people out there thinking of it, not you, who are going to think, oh, well, what about Evander? He could hit quick in combination. Come on. Ali outpoints Lewis pretty comfortably, in my view. But it's a fight that Ali, it's a physically hard fight for Ali because of Lewis's size coming at him, but Ali outpoints him by a big margin.
Okay. Lewis is about 2 inches taller. The reach is close. I guess the best Lennox Lewis is probably in the 240 range. Say Ali's 220 when they fight. Here's the way I see it, Jack. I think Lennox Lewis's size is a detriment against Ali. I actually think Ali has a tougher fight with guys like Jimmy Young or Doug Jones, who make Ali fight as the aggressor, and the quick guys, the small, quick guys that he can't dominate with his speed, and his physicality does no good because their speed takes them out of range. Lennox Lewis, to me, would be a big target for Ali. As you said, the speed. I just think Ali would just pick his spots, move, jab, grab. When Lewis looked for a breather, he'd open up. I just think Ali has too many ways and weapons to win, and I think he would use Lewis's size against him. I think Ali wins the fight. If it's a 15-round fight and he's really on, he might stop Lennox Lewis, but I would give the edge to Ali, so I would have to pick Ali there. And a lot of that is based on, I think Ali matches up with big guys better than he does small guys.
You don't think it would be a close decision? Because I don't think it would be close because of the style. Ali hit a little too quick, movement and all that. I'm talking about the very best of Ali.
10-5.
Fights, Frank, it's the very best of the guy. That's what we
the best I've ever seen. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we could sit here, Jack, and pick apart fights of both of them. If Ray Mercer could almost beat him, although it was a different style, Holyfield did do good with him the second time. I mean, Lewis had some stinkers too. And then you look at Ali, well, it's like, Lewis is better than Joe Bugner, and Ali fought him twice and couldn't put him down. So you could pick on a lot of things, but at their best, Ali just has more ways and weapons to win the fight. He has the toughness. And again, to me, I think Lewis's size goes against him. Okay. Here's another one, Jack, that someone emailed me that lives in the UK. He watches the show all the time.
Oh, nice.
And he wants to know who we would pick between Leotis Martin and Joe Frazier had Martin not had the detached retina after Liston, and he and Joe would have fought.
It's funny. One of my favorite lines was what Yank Durham, Frazier's trainer manager, said. He trained Leotis Martin at one point, and Martin's manager, Penny Schaefer, moved on from Yank Durham because he was training and managing Joe Frazier. So he felt there was a conflict, the manager, apparently. So supposedly Durham held a bit of a grudge and would never let Leotis Martin fight Joe Frazier when he was champion. So Durham said, I love this line. He said, I like Leotis personally, but he's so game that Joe might hurt him real bad, and I'd hate to see that happen. Two Philadelphia guys, Leotis Martin, highly underrated. Unfortunately, he missed out on this big opportunity, getting stopped on the cut lip by Jimmy Ellis in the WBA tournament, knocking out Sonny Liston, having a great knockout win over Thad Spence in the UK. I never saw him take that fight, but I hear that was a legendary type fight. really good credentials, but this is smoking Joe Frazier. What's Martin going to do to hold him off? He's not going to knock him cold. He's not going to spin him around. No, you got to go with Joe to get Leotis out of there, maybe in about 10 rounds, whatever.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Leotis's biggest win, well, yeah, because he beat Liston. He didn't beat Ellis. But if you take him and you watch those fights, you can see that Ellis was too quick for him, got the cut early, and pretty much dominated after that. Liston did not put the heat on like Frazier, afforded him room to box. And Sonny, who knows how old he was, probably 40.
The first half of the fight, Sonny was.
He was even dropped him in the fourth round with a left hook.
Right. Sonny knocked Leotis Martin down, but then somehow Martin turned it around. Sonny tired.
Sonny ran out of gas, Jack. He aged in dog years between the 5th and the 9th round. I think Frazier would stop Leotis Martin. And other than maybe the first round, I think after that, it's all downhill for Leotis Martin.
Frank,
so
can I cut in with a fight? It's not on our schedule. This is a Jack Hirsch asking Frank Lotierzo.
Go ahead.
Okay. You see the shirt I have on? Who would have won at their absolute peak? Ivan Drago against Apollo Creed at Creed's peak.
I'm going to take Creed over Apollo. I mean, I'm going to take Creed over Drago, Clubber, and anybody else Rocky fought.
You think he would have won the rubber match for Rocky too, or what?
He probably would have. I mean, he dominated the second fight except for that last punch.
Okay, there you go. Okay, Frank. Good.
So how about, all right, I don't want to go down that road. I was going to say Clubber Lang against Drago, but let's just go to our next fight because it's a goodie. Duran versus Whitaker at 135.
I don't know, Frank. You want an answer?
And that says a lot about Pernell Whitaker, doesn't it?
Let me tell you, there are two ways of looking at it. If this was going to be like the World Series, the best 4 out of 7, best 3 out of 5, I like Whitaker. I think he'll beat Duran more than Duran would beat him. But for one fight, one and done, the Duran who fought Leonard, that was a welterweight, but if he fought that way at lightweight, the Duran maybe against Buchanan, I think, I got to give a tiny edge to that version of Duran. But seeing Duran throughout his whole career as a lightweight, Whitaker does beat him most of the time. But Duran at his absolute zenith. You know what my little piece of evidence could be, Frank? Benitez against Duran. Even though the judges had it close, Benitez clearly beat Duran.
But it's 20 pounds up from lightweight.
But Duran was in top shape for Benitez. Duran was still good in 1982. He got him back in shape. He would later give Marvin Hagler all he could handle and then win a couple of titles after that. Beat Iran Barkley, Davey Moore. So what's my answer? Duran at his absolute zenith, I give a little edge to. But if they fought a few times, I'd like Whitaker more so to win more often than Duran.
Okay, but since this is a one-fight tournament and both guys are at their best, you like Duran.
If we but it pushed between the two, that Whitaker that beat Greg Hagen, that version, give them neutral judges who are in, Duran. Don't go crazy over Duran. They don't favor him in the judging.
Yeah, the fight's not going to be in Panama City.
No. But judges have tended to favor Duran. They made the Hagler scoring closer than it should have. They made the Benitez scoring closer than it should have. The first fight with Leonard could have gone either way, but they slanted to Duran, even though it was a fair decision. Don't get me wrong; it could have gone either way.
Right.
And Whitaker has had hard luck with the scoring in a couple of fights against Chavez, against Jose Ramirez. The judging doesn't seem to favor Whitaker so much, and it seems to favor Duran a little bit. That's why I would favor Duran, but if I knew the judges were completely split down the middle, then I give a tiny hair to Whitaker. In other words, I don't know,
Jack,
Frank.
you are all over the place here.
I am, because I don't know.
Okay.
I'm hedging.
Okay. If they're fighting at lightweight, I'm going to favor Duran because I just think, as you said, at welterweight, he outboxed Leonard. And not outboxed him, but he was able to keep Leonard, even though Leonard went in with the idea to trying to prove he was the puncher. Duran still controlled the real estate in that fight. I think his physical strength and chin and his ability to force Whitaker back and work him over at the same time, I would give Duran the edge. He would not knock Whitaker out, but I just think, Jack, I think he would overwhelm him after about 3 or 4 rounds. I could see Whitaker getting out and giving him some trouble, but I just think the overall strength of Duran at 135 would wear Whitaker down trying to outbox him. So if they're at their best, I think Duran wins. If they fight 5 times, Whitaker could surely get one. And we know, well, you really can't say this about Duran at lightweight because he never mailed it in at lightweight. Other than the first De Jesus fight, he was in shape for all his big fights. After that, he changed, where Whitaker was always in shape.
Listen, guys who boxed and had movement gave him trouble, even though he clearly won the fight. Edwin Viruet twice. Duran wins clear decisions. As much as he hated Viruet's guts, couldn't.
He hated both of them, Adolfo and Edwin.
I think you may have been in Philadelphia for the
I was at the 77 fight.
Okay.
But to me, Jack, Viruet ran more than he boxed. He didn't win any rounds. He went the distance, but he really didn't win any rounds or make it a close fight.
No, not true. I thought it was like an 11-round-to-4 fight. That was
Jack, that's a landslide. 11-4?
He didn't win any rounds. I mean, that makes.
Well, but if I win 4 and you win 11, it's like I didn't win any.
Ray Lampkin.
Jack, wait a second. There was no drama in that fight.
No, none at all.
I thought, and I never felt that Viruet was really trying to win the fight.
No, yeah, you're right. Duran won by a big margin.
And I think a lot of that had to do with Viruet trying to survive.
Ray Lampkin gave Duran problems before
he did
stopped in the 14th movement. Villamor Fernandez. Duran dominated, stopped him in the 13th, but the idea that these guys with movement box could trouble him, and they didn't have Whitaker's offensive skills, these guys, or his talent, or his wizardry.
Whitaker had a great right jab. When he wanted to, he could punch. He had a great boxing mind. I just think that physicality at 135 would come into play, and I just think Duran could make Whitaker do a few more things than Whitaker could make him do. I mean, he may make Duran look bad in spots, but I don't think he does any damage to alter the fight. It's a close fight. I like Duran by decision.
You could sway me on that one, Frank. What do we have next?
Carmen Basilio versus Emil Griffith.
This is a tale of 2 weight divisions, Frank. At welterweight,
I'm going to say at welterweight is where they both made their mark. So let's go welterweight.
Then I like Griffith in that fight. At middleweight, I would go with Basilio. Close fights, both of them. Basilio could box, but he relied a lot on toughness. Okay.
Yes.
Toughness. He was one of the toughest fighters, whoever you could argue for pure toughness, Carmen. I just feel Griffith was a little smoother, a little, more methodical. Griffith's weakness is at times he would be a little bit lazy.
Right.
Okay. Against Basilio, I know he couldn't afford to be that way.
No, he couldn't.
Force him to fight. I just feel Griffith was a little bit the better boxer, and Basilio couldn't rough Griffith up.
No.
He wasn't really going to hurt him. He wasn't going to outlast him either because Griffith
was physically strong.
Yeah.
And he was active when he wanted to be. The only thing I will say this, I have no doubt that in the fight, Basilio is the guy coming forward making the fight.
Yeah.
So Griffith is going to have to beat him and outbox him on the fly, circling, using the ring. He's going to be the boxer in that fight. But I like Griffith. No way it's a stoppage. So I got to go with Griffith to win that
fight. I think it's a close fight. Very close fight.
All right, Jack. There's two here. They're both really good that we shouldn't hit quickly. All right, let's go this one. We'll save the other one for next week. Gene Fullmer versus Benny Briscoe.
I mean, it's I'll tell you, we really honor Russell Peltz on this show. You know, he brings but I'm gonna say,
Jack, they sent it to me. Or somebody posted it. I didn't. It's not my fight.
Tough. I mean, tough fight. Two hard men. That's how they are described. I know Russell once described Gene Fullmer as winning and winning ugly. Do you know what Russell once did? He wrote a letter to a boxing magazine. I remember this. He was outraged. There's this writer, a good writer, William Detloff, I think it was, who wrote, that was a writer, I believe, that wrote a story, you know, something mythical fights, and he picked Bernard Hopkins over Gene Fullmer, okay? And Russell was upset about it, okay? So he wrote a letter to the editor, like, how dare you know, not the editor. I like letters to the editor. I mean, how dare you put Hopkins over Gene Fullmer? He said Fullmer maybe won, but he won ugly, but he won this and that. And then Russell says to the writer, "Turn in your press pass." Okay, that's how outraged he was. So
I wonder if they're friendly today.
No, but listen, if Russell is that outraged that someone picked Hopkins over Fullmer, you can't argue, say, then Briscoe would beat Fullmer. I would like Fullmer in that fight. Fullmer was strong as a bull. Briscoe was strong as a bull. Briscoe had an underrated.
Briscoe was the better boxer, too.
Better boxer, good boxing ability. But I think it would turn into a brawl. Briscoe was glad to brawl with fighters who wanted to go head-to-head and fight him. He wouldn't be using his boxing ability against Fullmer. I don't think Fullmer would allow him to fight a disciplined fight. It would be a rough, tough, ugly fight. Fullmer wins, a decision. It might turn into a foul-filled fight, probably.
Well, they're both capable of that, no doubt.
Yeah.
Before I answer this, let's make this clear. Our buddy J. Russell Peltz underestimates and underrates Bernard Hopkins. Russell, if you're watching, I think that you do. I don't know why. Maybe you just don't think he's all that. I don't think Hopkins over Griffith is that much of a reach. I'm not sure I would make the pick, but I don't think it's crazy. As far as Fullmer and Briscoe, boy, that's a tough one, Jack. They're going to meet in the middle of the ring. Briscoe's going to jab. Fulmer's going to try to catch him with the overhand right. That is a tough, tough, tough fight to pick. But for 3 out of 4 fights, even though he wasn't in his prime, Fullmer took it to Robinson and walked into the buzzsaw. And other than that, the greatest left hook I ever saw, he really never was that phased or hurt. So I don't think Benny could hurt him. I think Fullmer would win a disputed decision, and there'd probably be a lot of people there that thought Briscoe won. I could see Briscoe's jab bothering Fullmer, but I could also see Fullmer get that overhand right in. That's a close call. Today I like Fullmer. If you ask me next time we do the show, I might take Briscoe. And Fullmer, Jack, was a little bit more consistent than Benny was. Would you agree?
Yeah, Benny, I remember when he fought my friend Vito Antifermo at the Garden. Briscoe was maybe starting his decline, but I know he was beating Vito for 6 rounds, and for whatever reason, Benny could get a little lazy at times. And I shouldn't say this because if you saw, I think his 3rd fight against Rodrigo Valdez, what a fight, the way they went at it the whole time. But Benny could sometimes, maybe not lazy, let me take that back. He could be inconsistent. That's a better, way of putting it.
And think about this. Russell has told me on more than one occasion he sweated Rodrigo Valdez for Briscoe more than Monzon. He felt that Briscoe could actually match up and do better with Monzon than Rodriguez. He said he hated that matchup.
Yeah, Frank. No, listen, great stuff, Frank. And we'll revisit all this next week. There'll be more hypothetical fights. Just let's thank viewers out there for their suggestions, because we love,
Yeah, they're doing a great job. They're keeping us on our toes, and we have some good ones for next week.
Okay, Frank, it's been a blast, like always. Enjoy tonight's NFL game. I like
absolutely. And everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.